זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע.
What a great day. Welcome to the practical portion. Hi, I'm Charlie Brown. I get to jump into his testament with you. Gosh, I can't believe that he lets us do this, right? That he reveals these amazing things to us that we get to walk out in our lives every day. So if you're new, welcome. If you're watching live, hey, I'd love to hear from you. Please be sure to put little chats in there. I want to hear from you. Comment back and forth. That's really fun. And if you're listening on the replay, if you're watching on YouTube later, hello. Make sure you share this with your friends. Share this with someone who you're like, you know what, I think they would love this, because that's also a blessing. So we're jumping in this week to Exodus chapter 27. We're going to start around verse 20. And for those of you also following along in the Haftarah, we'll be in 1 Samuel 15 to 24. Today, if there's time, I am going to jump into that really briefly, because I think there's some really good practical application in that. And so I have had the privilege, I just want to do a shout out right now to the Rangels in Colorado Spring and the Branch. Thank you. What an amazing weekend I had. They had me there this weekend sharing with their women. We had a workshop on Sunday, and I was blessed to share about the spirit of control. So those of you who possibly have maybe a women's group or an event, something coming out, I do have spots open in my calendar left this year. So I would, reach out to me. I would love to chat with you. You can email me at charlie@charliebrown.com. And remember, it's just an I. There's no E in Charlie. So charlie@charliebrown.com. Or you can call or text me at the office number. It's 707-582-5377. You can call, text that number, leave a message. I usually don't answer that number. It's actually dedicated to the office, but you can call that and I can get back to you. But I'd love to come out and see your women or your congregation and share with whatever you have going on. That would be fun. So also, I do also want to add that the She Prays conference is coming up. It's March 26th. It's an all-day virtual event. There will be breakout sessions and live Q&A involved. You can watch it in your jammies. That's the fun. You don't have to worry about getting all dressed and going out. So we're going to save you having to go. It is a free event as long as you're attending live. For those of you who can't make it live, we do have options available for you. You can get the teachings, all the teachings in a packet, or if you're a member of the Rooted Cafe, it's included in your membership. Please don't buy it because it's all included in your membership. You don't have to do that. So I had such a great time this weekend. I want to just once again, what a great time. It was a personal retreat for me. Can I just say, I landed at the airport and they set the tone. They picked me up from the airport, took me straight to the massage therapist. I mean, really? And I had a beautiful massage. So blessed. Women just pouring into me as much as I felt I was able to pour into them. So it was really fun to actually have this like symbiotic relationship going on, that we get to do that. Hi, Gina. I see a hi, Gina. I actually see a comment. I rarely get to see those. That just popped up. Hi, Gina. So that was an awesome weekend again. And I just want to say for all the rest of you too, you're not alone. Some of you feel like maybe I'm alone. I don't have a community. I'm trying to walk out this whole testament of his word, the whole Bible. And I feel like I'm alone. And I just want to know, if you're looking for a community, no matter where you are, if you're brand new or if you've been doing this for 40 years, if you go over to therootedcafe.com, there is something for you. We have an amazing community, amazing teachings, amazing workshops. There are thousands of hours of just amazing content for you. My concern is that you get overwhelmed. You know what? But the best part is we have the best community. We have the best private women's discipleship community, mentoring each other, discipling one another, be holding each other accountable, learning his word, loving each other. There's no people there that are like the Torah police, or they're coming in, they're like knocking the Bible over your head. You can ask those questions and not feel stupid. I love it so much. So I want to encourage you to go over and check it out. So let's jump into the word. Okay. So, one of my favorite things to do is downtime that's not, Bible related. One of my favorite things to do is to like go through Pinterest and look at clothes and look what people are wearing. And when I'm packing to go to an event, it's interesting because I'm thinking like what I would like to wear on the plane is not what I usually wear. What I would like to wear is like, like some, workout pants and a comfy t-shirt and everything. But what I end up wearing is, of course, I still try to dress comfortable, but I want to level up because whoever's picking me up from the airport for the event that I'm going to be working at or sharing in, they need me to look a certain way. They need me to not show up in like flip-flops and my workout pants. They need to we have a need for that. We are humans, and that's we may not like it, and I'm probably will get messages back, but the truth of the matter is we need people we kind of look up to. We need people who are set apart, who, when we see them, we're like, oh, yeah, that's going to be our speaker. Like, you just don't want your speaker showing up like, willy nilly, right? And not that I'm comparing myself to a high priest, by no means, but I do want to just set that there is a precedence. And I think that's something we're kind of losing right now in our culture. We're losing that getting dressed up. I love watching old movies where you even see the men dressing up to go to a baseball game. Isn't that fun? Or in the 20s, watching the beautiful costuming, or in the Victorian age, the beautiful costuming, and they dress to go to dinner. I mean, is this important? Yes, let's dress this high priest. We're going to jump in and we start talking here in Leviticus. We're going to talk about, we're starting Leviticus 27, and in my right now I'm using what I'm going to be reading out of is the scriptures Bible, and it starts out in the tent of appointment outside the veil, which is before the witness. And we are continuing from last week. We're based around the testament, right? The testimony, the place where the Holy One meets us. Everything is going to be in relation to that. You're going to say, well, this behind this, which is in front of this, but ultimately it's in front of the mercy seat where the testaments are kept, where he will meet us. Okay. In his word is where he meets us. If you're saying, I don't hear him. I don't know what he's saying. Can I just encourage you to be in his word? Be in his word, because that's where he meets you. He meets you there. Everything that we hear, even here, he's saying, in this tent of appointments, in this place where, I have a calendar. Do you guys have a calendar? I have a couple. I use my Google Calendar for pretty much everything. That's another day to talk about, but I don't have a to-do list. I put everything as an item on my calendar so I know how I'm booked out and I can see the weight of what is going on in my life. But I also have like an overview calendar. Most of you have something like this where I'll look at and I can kind of tell like, oh no, this isn't a good time for me to be out of town. This is when the feasts are. I can look ahead and plan. Then I have another calendar that I use that's a little bit different. And this calendar is more about, I'll open it to a blank page. It's more about evaluating myself. So I go through and I do some evaluations, talking about what is something that I really need to appreciate today, keeping me accountable for walking a certain way in leadership, walking a certain way in my life, things well balanced. That's what that one's for. And it seems silly. It's not, I'm not using that calendar to make plans, nor the other ones. But right now we see this is a place where these appointments are going to happen. God has a calendar. God has a calendar. The place, I believe, it's a portal in time that opens up. We see Shabbat every week. It's a portal that opens up for your Sabbath, where he's like, I will meet you in these moments, in these festivals. We have festivals coming up right now. We have Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. He tells us to do those things forever. We don't just stop doing it. Yeshua died on a cross. It didn't say that we stopped doing it. We have Shavuot then after that, right? We have this, we have beautiful feasts throughout the year. We have to practice meeting with him in his return every single year at these appointments. So here's this place of meeting. Here's this place of the calendar, the tent of this appointment. I don't know why that hit me today, but in this version it says, in the tent of appointment outside the veil, which is before the witness. So that was kind of cool to me. So we jump right into clothing, and we're going to dress this priest. Okay, Aaron, Aharon, going to be the high priest. He's scheduled as a high priest. And something that I remember reading back I believe Gail Heaton wrote it in her Parsha Points, was talking about ancient Near East perspective. Those of you who are in the Rooted Cafe, she has an amazing section, very short, easy to read. Don't let me sing Near East perspective. Let that like freak you out. it's actually so well written, and it's so at such a great level that even if you're a beginner, you're going to be like, wow, this is easy to read. But if you're an advanced reader, you're going to be like, wow, I never knew that. It's genius like that. But I do remember reading at one point where her talking about that the sages believe, that Moses forfeited the ability to be the high priest. He forfeited that when he let Aaron speak for him, when he stepped back and he let Aaron be the one who speaks for him. So this particular portion that we're in right now, it's the only parsha or the portion in the Torah where Moses doesn't show up. Moshe is nowhere. His life, he's missing in this. This is all about Aaron. This is all about the high priest and about the Levitical priests. That's all that's going on. And just random fact. The other thing is, if you notice in here as you're reading through this whole section, as you're reading and you're like, wait a minute, there's no women in here. And you all know I'm an advocate for women in leadership, women in church leadership. I'm a huge advocate for that. I know there's a lot of controversy around that, and there's people who listen right now. This might not be the program for you, and I respect that. I respect your opinion or your thoughts and your views on that. Opinions we all have those, but I respect if you have a deep-seated understanding of that. But I want to just touch on this really quickly on here. There's no women in here, not because women weren't they were like not good enough to become a priest. The reason, if you think about it, this is conjecture, so can we just like blab a little here? Think about during the times, other religions had priestesses, right? They had men and women serving in the church. This is a time to take the sexuality out of the church. That was what was happening in all the other temples. This is a way of setting this aside to say, no, we're not going to have women in here because it's setting them apart. It's another way. Think Kodesh. Every time you see holy, the word in Hebrew, Kodesh, think set apart, set apart, set apart, set apart, set apart. Do we hear it? Okay. Every time you see that word in this section, holy or Kodesh, you read it, set apart. For them to be set apart, the men need to work in there. And think about it. I mean, it's distracting. I was in the military, and it used to be that women could not be in combat situations. My husband, as an Army Ranger, he has an opinion on this. Is that it would be very difficult because it's a man's instinct to automatically want to protect and save. It would be very distracting to have women in combat situations. My opinion right now, my understanding today, but could change. But let me just ask, can you imagine if there's women all working around in here? It would get very distracting. It would also open up for temptations that wouldn't be good. There's a focus, and the focus needs to be on one thing. So because it's heavy, laborsome work, it needed men to be strong to be able to help with these cattle management. I mean, can you only imagine what's running through this? It wasn't a job really appropriate for women at the time. So there's a couple reasons why I believe women were not included in this portion of working in this section of the tent of meetings. And we're not talking about them having to have certain things. Later on, we're going to hear some things different, but right now I want you to focus on that. And I'd love to hear your input on that. Again, not your opinion. I mean, I just want to hear like, hey, maybe here's another reason why women aren't in there. Here's another reason. I think it really matters. And then, does it really matter what you wear? Does it matter what you wear? I mean, I talked to you about traveling. I mean, even when I travel, I think about if I were coming to your house and I was traveling, I wouldn't sleep in the same thing that I sleep in at home, because you have an expectation when I'm in your home of probably clothing that I should wear, as I said before. So I have specific garments that I would wear to your house that have a robe, that have uh, they have I would be very well covered. It would be probably more than I would wear in more than a little dress or something. I'm covered, out of respect for you, out of respect for anyone in your home. Also, so I present a way that would be respectable and to be a good representation of the Holy One as well. So matters what you wear. They used to say it's clothes that make the man or clothes that make the woman, but it even matters. I think it matters, and people need to see us set apart because we're ambassadors of the kingdom. We're told to wear certain things for reasons, and think about it as we're going out. We are a representation. We are ambassadors of the kingdom of God. So do the things we wear represent an ambassadorship? And I'll go back to, I love of the show with Anne Hathaway and Julie Andrews, and I talk about that show all the time. and the Princess Diaries, and she has to change how she's dressing, right? She has to wear certain clothes and look a certain way because she's representing a kingdom. She is a princess now in line to the throne, and she has to look a certain way and walk a certain way and act a certain way. Like it or not, you have called to be a kingdom of priests. You're called, and women, men, we're called to walk, to be a certain way, and people are watching, and we want to look set apart. We want people to go, oh wow, they represent well. When was working at a hospital, in the hospital, one of the things was confusing a lot of times is everyone in the hospital wears scrubs, so no one knows unless you are a doctor. Most of the times, the doctors will have a lab coat on, but then there's other people who will come in and maybe wearing a white lab coat, and you think they're the doctor, but they're not the doctor. So you start to ask them all these questions. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm just getting your blood. I'm working the lab. Okay. Or we have a name tag. The name tags are different, but sometimes if you're me, you don't have your glasses on, you can't even like see. So right, so you're it's difficult when everyone's wearing the same thing. So I worked at one hospital and everyone had different colors. So like the nurses all wore a certain color, the RNs wore a certain color, the LVNs wore a certain color, your CNAs wore a certain color, and then you had housekeeping wore a certain color because it got to a point once where often your patients in the room, someone's coming in to empty the trash can, you have house cleaning come in with scrubs with a cute little smiley faces all over it, and they thought she's the nurse, and they're asking for something, and she was like, "Oh, I'll tell the nurse. I'll take care of that for you." She goes and tells the nurse, gets lost. It, it gets confusing. Okay, so there's chaos sometimes when everyone's wearing the same thing. So it seems like a silly thing for us to jump into this to say, oh, what does this really matter? But it does really matter. Um, think about they're going before a king, so it matters what they're going to wear. And we're going to get really specific into this. It's going to matter what you wear when you walk before a king. Even Joseph, if we think about Joseph, right? He's called out of the pit. He's called out of the prison. Hey, I want you to come, interpret some dreams. I'm going to need you to comment. What did happen? They bathed him and they put new clothes on him, right? Because it mattered what he was going to wear to be in front of the king. Who else? Esther, Hadassah. Remember? It took a whole year for her to prepare to stand before the king. You don't just willy-nilly run in. We can go boldly to the throne, but you wouldn't go running in to meet even the president or a king of anywhere without trying to look your best. So I know this is I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but it really matters. The priest garments, though, the one thing that's interesting about them is the priest garments, if you read about them, they're also linen and wool. They're a combination, which is actually, we read later when we're looking at in some of the commands, it's prohibited for regular clothes to have a mixture. They're not supposed to have a mixture, but isn't it interesting? And I'd love to hear your input. I'm going to tell you mine. The input on why you think that the priests were allowed to wear a combination while they were doing priestly work. Why were they allowed to wear a combination? So I can see a few little comments on here for other things here. Yeah, men served during specific ages because they needed to be strong. Exactly, Kate. Great. That's good. So just sages kind of have said that and I think Gail wrote this in her Parsha point as well, is it was a reminder that mixture leads to chaos and then to death. And then wearing that mixture was just, when we mingle things in our lives, it brings chaos. When we're divided, we're unstable in all our ways. It brings chaos. And then what happens? It brings death. This is random. I don't know why this came to my mind, but have you ever noticed? I'll give you an example. At Shabbat, if I choose to have more than just like, oh, I'm Shabbat, I have a little glass of wine and I'll just have like a drink just to be part of the covenant. But if I drink like a whole glass by myself, what I notice is my inhibitions go down, and what happens then is now I'll have dessert, and I wouldn't have had dessert before. When we start mixing things, and I'm saying mixing because I'm thinking, there's it breaks down our inhibitions because, well, it's not that bad, and we start breaking things down. I think that's what happens in our lives, and it's just practical reminder. Sages will say that mixture was a reminder to everyone is when that happens, there's chaos and death. Okay. This part is so cool to me, and every year I love it so stinking much, is I want to just say before I jump into these clothes he's wearing, I want to remind you guys is when we're talking about the way this Mishkan, this portable tabernacle, the tabernacle is it's broken down. It's in these sections, right? We have three major sections of it. Um, it's actually, if you go back to Mishpatim, if you go back, the same verbiage is used in that parsha. If you go back about Sinai, and I think Rabbi Foreman in Aleph Beta does a video on this, but he shows, or one of the guys that work there, they show the equivalent, like Mount Sinai, that the people could come so far, and then it was divided off. They couldn't touch the mountain. They could only get to this point. The next point was for the priest, and then the next point was for Moshe and Aaron. Like they could go up to the top and hear from God. But there was levels, right? Same thing happens here. So it's kind of like this tabernacle is like a portable Sinai. Like they got this, and you have the cloud comes down with fire. Oh wait, that's what happens to the tabernacle. The cloud comes down with fire. And it's, if you look at it, it's a way that God will say, I don't want you to move away from me as you're leaving, and Sinai's over here and you forget. So I'm going to put like a portable Sinai flattened out for you so that um, you can then be reminded of what I did. You can be reminded of that experience with me. There's still a place where I'm in your presence and I can be with you at all times. That was just a cool thought. And those that I'm pretty sure it was with Aleph Beta where I was listening to that a couple years ago. So just check that out. So it's just really cool that he actually dwells in us. He dwells. And then you think of our lives. I have to expand on. You think about our bodies, who we are. He says we are the tabernacle. We're the tabernacle. Think about the parts of us as well. There's parts where people can only go so far, and then there's parts. We're made up of three parts, right? We're still those three parts as well, and he's in our soul, the centermost part of us, deep inside of our heart. Um, yeah, yeah, I think that's really cool. We can look at it the same way as we're the tabernacle, and we do bring his presence everywhere we go. I think it goes back to our clothes. Isn't that a commonality? How we present ourselves. We're still the tabernacle. We're his representation. So we're gonna dress Aaron. Are you guys ready? Let's get Aaron dressed. So one of the things I again love, like I said, about this parsha every time we jump into it each year is as you start out, we're looking. He has these gems on the tops of his shoulders, and each one 6 and 6. We've got the names of each of the tribes, 6 on the shoulder, 6 on the shoulder, and he's bearing these before the Holy One. They're when he comes into the Holy of Holies, he's bearing the weight of his shoulders, right? They're the same size. They don't have one that's okay, these are the bad ones, so they're going to be here. And only Judah, there's just Benjamin and Judah on this one, and then all the other 10 are over on this side. No, they're equal, all equally weighted on his shoulders. They're all, and both stones are the same size. So no one is greater, no one is less than. And then on the breastplate, and I'm going to call it different. The breastplate of right ruling, okay? Righteousness, right ruling. You have this breastplate where you have each one of these stones, again, all the same size, all 12, the same size. And now each one of the tribes is engraved on that stone, also set in gold. This right ruling is placed on his chest. Everyone equal, no one bigger, no one smaller, all the same. And then it says they're connected. We're going to connect these shoulder pieces to the breastplate, this right ruling, this breastplate. We're going to connect them with these rings. The rings need to be connected. The ring is called tabah. The word in Hebrew, it's to press into soft material like clay. It's to make an impression. Like you need to attach these so that they make an impression into the thing so that they were strongly attached. And if you read that section, it says they're to be attached so well, don't come loose. Now, when we go back, we're going to look about the laws, and we're going to talk about there needs to be right rulings, and that scales need to be balanced. It's saying this I think it's in Mishpat, Mishpatim. I think it's in there too. There has to be, if someone knows, put this in their notes. But in that portion, one of the things that's important is when you're ruling something, the scales have to be balanced, right? You don't have unbalanced scales. You make sure things are kept so that they're not ever unbalanced or in a diagonal, right? So one of the things that was important is to make sure this breastplate that's on Aaron is continually stays affixed properly so that there's not an imbalance. It's not imbalanced in any way on him. It's not slipping. It's always secured and it's always equal. And one of the things that happens is as we see him, it's attached so well, it doesn't come loose. Yeah, it is a reflection from Mishpatim. I put a note in my notes right here. So then justice is always equal. So think about it. As Aaron is coming into the Holy of Holies, he's acting almost as this legal counsel for them as he's coming in before the holy judge. Oh, wait, are you getting a picture of Jesus, Yeshua, as he's our advocate? He's our high holy priest coming before the throne and advocating for us before the throne, bearing the names on the shoulder and on the palms of his hands. He's bearing our names, but we see Aaron doing it. He's bearing the names before the Holy One and saying, remembering the right rulings, the righteousness of them, and bringing that before. Because for us, we know that we have an accuser and we have Yeshua who's advocating for us at all times. He's always fighting for us. And it reminded for me that everyone didn't have to wear their own thing. So they were like, hey, other than they had their banners that they would march behind, but they weren't all having to wear this breastplate. So they didn't walk around the camp going, remember your righteousness. But you had one person who was bearing it for all of them, carrying on the sins and the trouble of everyone, saying, don't forget, these are right, all in the same, you're equal in your own eyes. These are all the same. And it reminded me that, I'm doing a lot of teaching on control, the spirit of control. A lot of it. Just did that workshop this weekend. We did a workshop for all my friends that are control freaks and addicts. But most of us, we go out to fight for something. We go out to fight for things. We're ready to fight at all times. And we realize we have someone who's advocating for us and fighting for us. And we're told over and over that we can just be still. Be still and know that he's God. Be still, know that he's going to do the right thing. Still and know he's in control. We don't have to fight for ourselves. My husband shared something with me this morning, and honey, if you're listening, please forgive me. I forgot to ask your permission to share this, but I think it's okay. We had an issue with a printer and with ink, and stuff was going on, and it's been a mess. I mean, it felt like calling the IRS, like, how you're just trying to get through, and we're getting all kinds. It's been a mess. You guys can imagine. So we're trying to deal with this whole thing. So finally we've gotten to the place of frustration, and my husband's like, I'll take care of it. Let me just take over it. Well, the person was supposed to call last week. They didn't call. Then they finally called today, and he's now ready, guns loaded. Anybody else been there? Like, you're ready when they finally call you. Your guns loaded. Every vain imagination, you're like, I'm ready. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to tell them this, and this is what's going to happen, and they're going to make this right. Fully in control, fully going to advocate for us. He's fully going to step in and do it. And what ends up happening is the lady calls and he says, listen, he just, unloads about how unhappy he is with what's going on, how this has been handled, everything. And the lady was like, sir, I'm so sorry this will happen. The reason I'm calling was I wanted to see, we want to send you 2 free ink cartridges so that we can make up for what's happened. He was like, oh, Charlie, Dad just stomped me today, just in a good way, right? Just made me realize he's fighting for us. He's advocating for us. And I don't know who out there right now, if your fight feels so strong and that you're just in this fight and you feel like maybe the scales are imbalanced and you don't feel like there's right rulings. Maybe you're the one who's seeing things imbalanced and you need to straighten up, make sure that you're clasping his righteousness on you. We're told about, right, our blessed breastplate of righteousness that we're supposed to wear, our helmet of salvation, right? How are we to walk out? We are supposed to righteously think. Instead, we don't. We control and hold on, and the scales get imbalanced, and then we get off the mark. But he's saying you to come into my presence, and if we spend time in his presence, he's going to kind of straighten things up. But he sees things from the right way. It is righteous, not like this or like this. And he's going to for you. He will work it all for our good. He promised that in Romans 8:28, right? It will all work for our good. I think, gosh, he's so good. We're so blessed. So if you're out there fighting and your fists are tight and you're trying to advocate for yourself with something, can I encourage you today to just release your hands today flip him like this, raise him up like this, and can you just spend some time in his presence and let him bring righteousness, right rulings back to your mind and your heart and your soul, and spend some time in his presence. Let our high priest be your advocate, the one that goes and fights for you, not worrying about what you say before you go before the magistrate, making sure that your heart is right in him and then see what's right for you. I want to encourage you for that. Okay. 2832. This is kind of a cool fact. 2832, he says, and the opening of his head, he's talking about the robe going over Aaron. We're still addressing him a little here. And the opening of the hole uh, for his head shall be in the middle of it, a woven binding all around its opening, like the opening in a scaled armor. Very interesting, right? Like this beautiful thing that's going over him, this coat that's going over him. It's this uh, the robe, his robe going over him, and it's all blue. Okay, but I love this part of it, like the opening in a scaled armor, so that it does not tear. There's not going to be seams anywhere. There's just going to be a hole in the middle to slip over. Otherwise, it would tear. And I was reminded when I read that of John 19:24, when the Roman soldiers they specifically, John tells us about Yeshua's robe not tearing. They were careful to fear that it would tear. They didn't want it to tear. And I just feel like that was a hyperlink back to here, that the high priest robe was meant that way. Referring to Yeshua as our high priest. I think it was kind of a nod to that. Does anyone else feel like that? I'd be curious to hear if anyone else felt like that's a little nod there. Then we have chapter 29. I'm going to hop up. Where are we at? We got 30 minutes. Hop up to chapter 29. All right. Page of my chapter 29. In 29:14, it says, we start going into the offerings, the sacrifices. We start talking about these a little. Those of you who've been with me for very long, you know that Leviticus 1 and 2 are probably some of my favorite scriptures. I love talking about the approaches to the king. I love talking about the korbanot, or the approaches, translated as offerings and sacrifices. I love, love, love studying that out because it's so beautiful to me. It's beautiful the way that he has made a way for us to approach him. So I want you to, when you're looking at all of this isn't about us burning up animals, because he doesn't need us to do that. And we're told this multiple times in scripture. He doesn't need our sacrifices. He does not need that. It's in, I believe, in our Haftarah today in 2 Samuel. He says, he doesn't need your sacrifice, but obedience is better than sacrifice. He doesn't need us to do this. We need to do this. We're the ones who need to do. He prepared a way for us. I share a story of many of you, do you have dogs? I want to hear. Do you have a dog? Tell me in the comments what your dog's name is. I want to know what's your dog's name. If you're watching on YouTube, tell me your dog's name. How many you have, whatever, cat's name. But if you have, cats don't seem to care, but dogs are like this. When your dog does something wrong and you come home and you know they've gotten in the trash, or maybe they've pottied in the house, something's gone wrong. You know that they're going to hide. They they kind of cower down. They don't come running like they normally do. And what you have to end up doing once everything's settled down is you have to make a way for them to come into your presence. And I will bring this up again when we hop into Leviticus in a few weeks. You have to make a way for them to approach you. They're not going to, again, just come running up to you and boldly coming up to you like normal because they think they're in trouble. There's things that are going to keep them from doing that. So you have to make a way. You may bring a treat out. You may have to coax them. Come on. You create a way for them to approach you. Can I challenge you to think of it this way for these sacrifices? That this is a way that the Holy One, when we have felt like we've sinned, when we have shame, when we have guilt, when we have hurt someone else, and we've broken fellowship with someone, we've broken fellowship with someone, that he finds a way to help us get into his presence. Because we feel like we're supposed to be believers, but let's be honest, we're do-leavers. We feel like we have to do something, so then now we can be forgiven and get into his presence. So I think that's hard sometimes now because we don't have this, and we know that Yeshua was the sacrifice. It was difficult for us now even to to not do something to get into his presence. Well, I want you to think about that as we go through these in the next few weeks when you're seeing these things come up. So in 29:14, he says, "But the flesh of the bull and the skin of and its dung you shall burn with fire outside the camp." And the word there is it's a sin offering. It's hatat. It's a sin offering. And I want to encourage you again doing some study on your own about what does the word sin hatat mean. A quick clue: it is not, we think of as like, oh, sin, but it is missing the mark. And sometimes you need a course correction. It is an archery term to where you're not hitting that mark. And when you're and we know Torah is actually a course correction. Though his word is course correction that helps us hit the mark. It's the thing, it's not a law of sin and death. It's a law, it's laws that adjust us and keep us so that we hit the middle target and we stay on point and we hit the mark and we win the prize. That is what our goal is. So chatat is that whole thing is like, ooh, I've gotten off the mark. So I have to do something. I'm going to do something to do that. So what he's saying is, I want you to take the flesh, the skin, the dung. You're going to burn those outside the camp. For this case, it's going to be a chatat offering. It's all, but the rest of it, all the innards are going to be all done on the altar, which would be interesting if you spent some time meditating on that. Everything on the inside, we're going to pour it out on the altar. Everything's going to get burned out on the altar. But the outside stuff, the fleshy stuff and the poop, all that stuff, all of that is going to get burned away from that. But on the altar, I want you for this particular chatat, I want you to just we're going to do the innards, the fat, all your inside stuff, all the stuff that's in the secret places. I was thinking today, all these little things that are hidden that we don't see. And then in verse 18, we hop up and he says, "And then you shall burn the entire ram on the slaughter place, and it is an ascending offering." It's an olah. It's an olah offering. Okay, that's the first Leviticus 1. The first one they talk about is the olah. It's first in this case they wave it, and then they're gonna throw it. Then it's going to be the whole thing is burnt up. Everything gets put on the altar. You'll hear me continue on teaching this in Leviticus, talking about our will. Everything gets burned away. We hear Yeshua saying, your will be done. It's not about me. If I have to give up my whole will, everything that I think is the purpose of my life, I want to give it all to you. And then it says throughout a lot of places where we're talking about offerings going up, you're going to hear that it's a fragrance. Now, no one likes a barbecue better than me, but it always seemed weird to me to think, well, that's a fragrance. This offering this fragrance is just pleasing to him. And I looked up today. I was looking at the word, and the word is in this particular verse is katar. Katar. It's a kuf, a tet, and a resh. And I just kind of want to talk about just for a second. I want to talk about this. So this fragrance. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. It's a fragrance. Or we think, let's stop there. But let's kind of go through the letters and get a hieroglyphic. So the kuf is, and that's the root, by the way. The kuf is the design. I'm going to read actually from, I think I got this out of Blue Letter by, oh no, I did, Chabad.org. I want to tell you guys what they said about the letter kuf. The design of the kuf is similar to that of the hay. But while the hay represents holiness, the kuf represents kelipah, or unholiness. Both have 3 lines, 2 vertical and 1 horizontal. These 3 lines depicting thought, speech, action in the hay also are represented in the kuf. But in these 3 lines represent unholy thoughts, profane speech, evil actions. These negative qualities are illustrated within the actual form of the kuf. Its long left leg plunges beneath the letter's baseline. It represents one who ventures below the acceptable, an individual who violates the circumscribed boundaries of the Torah. And then there's the tet, the next letter in this word, the tet. So you guys have a picture of kind of what the kuf is. Could be the unholiness, unholy speech, unholy actions. The tet is the pot. It's like a pot. It's introverted. It's got an inverted rim, so things are hidden inside. So it could be the hidden good. It could be like a womb that could has a hidden baby in it. Like that's what the picture of that tet. Sometimes it could be a snake. They say. Okay, those of you keep up. Those that are new to this, trust me. Just trust me in this, and But those of you who have been studying this for a minute, you understand the contronyms. It can be one or the other. Then there's the resh, the last one. It's that person bent over, poor, made low. So if you look at this, we're seeing this hieroglyphic of the things of this offering, this qatar, this fragrance is actually taking the things that are unholy, right? And then we're bringing out in the middle of it this making ourselves low and bringing them out and bringing out the hidden good. Okay, so I mean, we can kind of see almost Romans 8:28. All things work for his good. So this is why this fragrance is as we humble ourselves and this he will lift us up, right? But as we're humbling ourselves, he's going to make beauty for ashes. As we humble ourselves and go in, is that fragrance is our humbleness that we're willing to say, I'm going to give you my thoughts, my speech, my actions, and I'm going to have you then convert them inside the hidden places, and you're going to bring forth birthing something beautiful out of it. The other thing was interesting is looking up this word as Gesenius translates it. It says that it's the fragrance or the incense says this was so good to me. It said it's fumigation in a close place that drives out the occupants. So the incense, this fragrance that's coming out, what happens, the reason it's a sweet smell, the reason this is my understanding today, is it's fumigating. You know when you fumigate something, if you like set bombs off in your house to drive out the pests that are in your house, imagine that as the same thing. As we set the bombs off in our hearts, as we set off these things, as we these the aroma that's coming up from these sacrifices is actually like a fumigation that it's driving out the occupants. It's driving out those evil things that are occupying that are not supposed to be there. It's a way of us presenting ourselves to him. And in that process, it's pushing out everything that's not supposed to be there. Can you see it? Isn't that cool? I think it's kind of cool. Next thing we talk about is a drink offering. You're going to see this pop up. It's going to talk about a drink offering. And that word is nesek, and the root of it is nasak, meaning to just pour out. Again, this process is all about us pouring ourselves out through the use of an animal, but we're coming in because we want to be in his presence so much that we'll pour out everything that means something to us, our will, our emotions, our provision. We're willing to pour it all out for him, and in the process of doing that, it exterminates everything else in our lives so that we see things clearly, so we hit the mark, so we hear his voice, so he can work all things for our good, so he can straighten things up, so that the hidden things in there, the good he's placed in us, can now come forth and be birthed. That's what this is all about. This is a way for us to approach him and to be in his presence. It's not about killing animals. It's not about that. It's about the obedience of laying down our own lives and saying, this animal is taking the place of me, that I'm not the one who has to do this. And now we know we have Yeshua as took the place of us. He took the place of me. He's advocating for me as a high priest, but he's also in this temple. You're going to see the tabernacle. He's all the things. He's also the animals who took our place, saying, I'm the way. You want to get to the Father? You get it through me. I'm the way. Through me. Through this sacrifice. I took it all on for you. That's how you get to me. I'm the approach. Not a ram. You don't have to do that. I'm the approach. So, again, we'll bring it up. Notice everything that we're going to see through all of this. Everything in here is in relationship to the testimony. Where's the testimony? And I want to just encourage us. Is our life a sacrifice? Are we an approach that's set up in relationship to the covenant he has with us, where he actually meets with us? And I think that's the big in all of this. You think, why do I need to read about all this? Because he's reminding us of who we are, whose we are, how to get into his presence. We do have an instruction manual that tells us how to do it. We may have to spend some time decoding it a little to find out how to practically apply it to our lives, but we do. I wrote out the other thing I just wanted to bring up was that notice that the priest prepare it says, I'm going to go 35. We're in chapter 29, 35. I'm going to read a minute. And so you shall do to Aaron and his sons according to all I have commanded you. 7 days you shall ordain them. 7 days, every single day. And prepare a bull each day as a sin offering for atonement. And you shall cleanse the slaughter place when you make atonement for it. And you shall anoint it to set it apart. It is holy, kedoshim. It is kadosh. It is kadosh. The kedoshim, the holy things, plural. It is kadosh. For 7 days you shall make atonement for the slaughter place and set it apart. And the slaughter place shall be most set apart. Whatever touches the slaughter place, it is to be set apart. And this is what you prepare on the slaughter place. And then he goes through and it says daily, continually. So the reason I put this, and he's talking about morning and evening, about the lamps have to be taken care of. One of the things we forget is the Levites were working they were working morning and evening. They were working around the clock. Guess what? They were working on Shabbat. They had to do some things on Shabbat. And so I have seen some people who are like the Shabbat sheriff, and they pull out their badge, put it on, and they're so focused on, oh my gosh, you did this. I want to remind you that um, you had priests working all the time. I had a friend share with me that someone had a hard time with them serving them on a Shabbat because I think they lit their stove or they heated something up in the microwave and they're like, oh, you started a fire. The priest started fires. Also remember that back when fires had to be literally, it was so much work to start a fire. I mean, just take all this before the Lord. Can we just give each other some grace? And can you just, if you are working in a Levitical position right now as a pastor or a congregation leader, sometimes your Shabbats are not restful, are they? Because you're working the whole day. You're working. You're getting up. I remember working in a church and thinking, oh my gosh, this is not a day of rest for me. Literally, the whole day was so exhausting. You see a lot of pastors take like Mondays off in a fundamental Christian church. They'll take Monday off. That's what I love about having, honoring Shabbat from Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown, because I do have Sunday now can actually be a day where if I'm working or if I'm ministering somewhere, that I know that I'm actually have another day before the world needs me to jump back out again. So love on each other, give each other some grace. Okay. I want to have you, let me make sure I didn't miss anything else before I have you jump into Samuel. Because it kind of goes, kind of, sort of. What else did I do? Yep. Everything else at the end, chapter 30. Again, we're talking about uh, lighting the lamps, strange incense. I guess that deserves a little mention. The strange incense. He's saying, I want you to light them continually. Put incense before and throughout your generations. Do not offer strange incense on it. That's verse 9, 30, verse 9. Or an ascending offering or a grain offering. Do not pour a drink offering on it. A lot of things that are strange strange fire just like in other verses, but we oftentimes will offer up a strange incense. Remember, we will fumigate with something like that. Doesn't fumigate, it doesn't do what we think it's supposed to do. And I think that's a good segue into the prophets, or the haftarah of this portion at 1 Samuel 15, 2 through 24. Hop into that. Let me get a chance to jump over there. Just 1 Samuel 15. Yeah, it would have been nice if I tabbed my Bible, huh? 15, 24. Okay. So 2 through 24. It's the story of Samuel coming to Saul, and Saul, the Holy One, is like, he is grieved because Saul has been told to go out and to kill the Amalekites, and he's supposed to annihilate everyone. And Samuel is told then by the Holy One is not to be basically king. He's abdicated now this position because he didn't listen. He didn't do what he was told, and instead he kind of did things on his own, which I think for us, we could stretch this and say it's kind of like a strange incense when we're doing things that we think are okay in our own eyes, right? A man's ways in his own eyes. Gosh, I do it all the time. Ladies, men, gentlemen, kids, I do this all the time. And it's part of one of the reasons talking about controlling things. I'm trying to control things, and in my attempt to control things, I end up, I think, presenting strange fire. and calling it something God did. So Saul goes out and he's battles these Amalekites, and Samuel then confronts him, and he's like, "Well, I did everything good. We went out, we did everything," and Samuel says, "What's that bleating that I hear?" And he's like, "Well, we brought back the very best. We brought back all the best sheep and everything so that we can make offerings." Here we go. There's that portion, right? About a strange incense. Don't put any of those things on there. This was strange to him. He didn't tell him to do this, but he had good intentions, right? He's telling us that anyways. My intentions were good. I saved, even though you said kill everything, I'm sure you didn't mean that because I brought it back so I could offer it to you. Isn't that the way we do so many things? Isn't that kind of what happened in the garden? All it took was Satan to say, is that really what happened? If you could just put a little question of a doubt in your mind. The people came back to Saul and they're like, "Oh no, this is what we want to do." Because he says later, "I just did this because that's what the people wanted." All they did is put a little bit of doubt, and he let them control what was going on instead of doing what he was told to do by God. What do we do with good intentions for God? It's actually strange incense. Has he brought something to your mind? If you feel safe to share it, I would love to hear. But otherwise, I'm going to challenge you to spend time in his presence and ask him, what strange things am I bringing into your presence? It's not you. And did he say to do that? That's one of my takeaways from this weekend, spending time with the ladies at the branch, and Joe and Elisa Rangel, is asking. I realize I ask about a lot of big things, but I don't ask him about a lot of little things. And little things like, "Did he say that's okay?" And I realize I spend a lot of time undoing a lot of things that I, with my own mouth, committed to or said yes to. And there's multiple things that I had to come back to people and repent to them in the last couple days and say, "You know what? This actually is not something that the Holy One wants me to do. I said yes before I prayed about it." And it's little stuff, guys. I'm not talking about some big giant things. I'm talking about some little things. Some of them are a little bigger, but I was excited about it and I thought it was a good idea. Have you done that? You thought it was a good idea. You thought it would be fun. You thought it would be something he would love. You thought it would be something that would bring him glory. I mean, I can tell you so many, I can sit here all day and tell you guys lists of things that I thought, "Oh, this would be such a great ministry opportunity. Oh, this would be so great if we put it together and we do this." And it was a hot mess because he didn't say to do that. A lot of times he lets me do it just for me to go, "Okay, go ahead, see what happens." And here we go with Saul. He does it. Um, I think sometimes I've done some things and then I'm mad later that he didn't recognize it. Have you ever done that? He didn't say do that, but I did it, and then I'm almost kind of mad that he didn't recognize that I did it, or I didn't get the recognition, or didn't get, well, I did it for you. I spent a season of my life being very angry because I felt like I've done all these. You God, are you kidding me? And then you let this happen? You let it all fall apart, or you let this happen? And I was angry. And he was like, most of the stuff he didn't even tell me to do. I did it all on my own. 15:22, where does he say? Let me scooch over. Is where he says, "Then Samuel said, 'Does Jehovah delight in ascending offerings and slaughterings as in obeying the voice of Jehovah? Look, to obey is better than slaughtering. To heed is better than the fat of rams. Your rebellion is as the sin of divination, and stubbornness is as witchcraft and idolatry.'" Because you've rejected his word, he also does reject you as the king. And it says, "And Saul said to Solomon, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the mouth of Jehovah and your words, because I feared the people and listened to their voice." He says, I feared the people and I listened to their voice. Are you leading people? You might be leading people in your home, maybe at work, maybe in a congregation, maybe a fellowship, maybe a Bible study, somewhere. You might just be leading yourself. Maybe it's me, myself, and I. That's who you're leading right now. Are there times when you let the fear of what they're going to say, change what you're going to do? That's happened to me. I can't tell you. There's some things just recently I had to do, knowing what people were saying. They were asking me to do something completely different. And it was a strong, people I respect and love were not happy with the decision that I made, but I know that I know in my knower that he was saying, do this. And I was so tempted to make them happy and fear that they were going to be upset more than I was going to be afraid of him. And I had to stop and be like, I'm more afraid that if I don't listen, that this is going to turn out well than I am of hurting their feelings. And if these are people I, again, love, adore. Has that happened to you? It's if he's saying, but the people, Aaron says this, right? For the golden calf, it's coming up. We're gonna hear, he's gonna say, but the people threw, but the people did this. That's his Saul, sound like Saul? What about Adam? Gave me. If we're in leadership, it's our responsibility to navigate what he said and didn't say. And it's important that we are spending so much time close to him that we know what he said and what he didn't say. One of the things in leadership, you may be saying, you make excuses for those people who are doing things that are not what he said. And it's not what he said. Some of it's super obvious. And we do things like, well, that's just how they are. Oh, they're just kids. Oh, kids will be kids. But I'm just going to tell you, don't fear their unhappiness. Don't fear they're not liking you. Don't fear them having something negative to say to you more than you're fearing what he is saying you have to do. Please don't. Ask him what you have brought into your home. Here's a good example. Something you may have brought into your home with intentions to offer it to him. Oh, this is for him. This is to glorify him. And he's saying, I never told you to do that. Did he tell you to do that? Ask him. He's in the details. Obviously, this whole Parsha, every little detail about what someone's supposed to wear, he's in it. He's in the details, down to these clothes of these priests. And he's saying, when we don't do this, it gets scary. In verse 23 here in 1 Samuel 15, he says, this is rebellion, and it's the sin of witchcraft. And the stubbornness to do it our way, that control, I'm going to do it my way and how I want to do it, that stubbornness is idolatry. We're bowing our knee to ourselves in the way we want to do it. So if you're trying to control how things are done, I want you to remember it's witchcraft and it's idolatry. If it sounds harsh, it is, because that's not who you're created to be. It's not who I'm created to be. We're created to bow only to him. We're created to be his witness, to be an example of him. And Saul tells us, I sinned because I feared the people and I listened to their words. Can I ask you today, whose words are you listening to? Whose words have got you tied up and you're just listening to his words? And can I encourage you to stop, to cut it off, and to listen? What is he saying to do? Every little thing. Father, should I do this? Yes or no? I mean, try it for a little while, for every little thing. And then I'll see you next week, and I want to hear what he's saying to you.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע, ואכפת לו מכל דבר קטן, תדע לך, שזו עובדה שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה שאלוהים
we are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the Messianic